Anyway, my next guest has got a chicken on his CD cover. It's a new comedy CD, the very best of Paul Morrissey, and it's available from his website. Please welcome back to the show, chicken lover Paul Morrissey.
Welcome to the Alley Oop Podcast. I'm excited, folks. This is your host, Paul Morrissey, if you don't know. This is my podcast. I got a lot of great guests. This episode, we got W Earl Brown, who is on one of the best TV shows ever, Deadwood on HBO. He played Dan Doherty, Al Swearengen's right-hand thug. So he's on the episode, but also excited. This is basically the official launch of the podcast. We officially have sponsors. We got the website going. It's awesome. So you can go to the website. It's alleyooppodcast.com. So alleyooppodcast.com. And you can follow along all the videos and stuff that we talk about during the episodes. You can just follow along. It's like a cool listening guide. So if you're listening in your car or while you're working out, you can go home and check out the videos we were talking about during the show later on. But we got some sponsors, folks. This is cool. We have Amazon.com is helping us out. If you shop on Amazon.com, all you have to do is go to the link, the little banner on alleyooppodcast.com. You click on that, and then just do your shopping. You don't have to give us any money, do anything, and a percentage of what you buy gets kicked back to the Alley Oop Podcast team. So that's great for me and the rest of the people here working to give you these free episodes. So that pays a little bit of the production cost, and it's a great way to give back. So if you shop on Amazon.com, click on the banner, the Amazon link on alleyooppodcast.com, and that would be a nice thing for you guys to do. If you're just going to buy stuff anyway, you can help us out. So that's cool. And you can also do the same thing with hotels.com. We have a little banner on the Alley Oop Podcast page as well. You just click on that, you get a little discount, and a little bit of that gets kicked back to us too. So that's pretty cool. And also, I wanted to get some ads to help you guys out. So the first company to join in and do that is called Uber. And Uber, I first used at the Sundance Film Festival. It's like a taxi service. It's always a town car or like a car service, and they pick you up. You get the app on your iPhone or Android, and basically you just hit pick me up, and they know exactly where you are from your phone. And there's a bunch of cars that work for Uber, so they'll come pick you up. So you set up you have your credit card already set up, and everything's good. So you don't have to pay anything, tip, or do anything. You just use the app, and everything's taken care of. It's like having your own private driver. So use Uber, and if you sign up and use the promo code Paul has a website, you get a $20 credit. So it's almost a free trip just for signing up with us, and that helps out the podcast too. So make sure you go to alleyooppodcast.com, check out all the sponsors and the videos and pictures and everything for these episodes coming up. And so let me explain today. We got our guest, W Earl Brown. Now, I met Earl. This is a weird story. I was performing in a comedy club, and basically he was at the show, and I made a joke about having like a Deadwood mustache. And he came up to me after the show, and he said I was Dan Doherty on Deadwood, and he also played the retarded brother on There's Something About Mary, and he also played Meatloaf. So who has played Meatloaf in the VH1 movie To Hell and Back, a retarded brother, and a Deadwood thug? The answer is there's one person. It's W Earl Brown. He's our guest today. Was a super interesting guy to talk to and with about show business, and we cover all kinds of ground, a lot of comedy, and all kinds of stuff. So And also, I learned that the dead man's hand came from Wild Bill Hickok when he got shot at Deadwood. He had a pair of 8s and a pair of aces, and that was from the Motorhead song, The Ace of Spades. So listen to that.
Pushing up the ante, I know you've got to see me. Read 'em and weep, the dead man's hand again. I see it in your eyes, take one look and die. The only thing you see, you know it's gonna be the ace of spades, the ace of spades.
Wow, learned something every day, usually from Motorhead. Hey, I just realized how high-pitched my voice sounded and how fast I was talking. During that introduction, I was just trying to cram in a bunch of stuff. I'm excited. We got sponsors. We got cool guests. I'm happy for you guys. Happy for me. This is cool. So yeah, we're going to play a bunch of clips from Deadwood, and the language is pretty salty. So you might not want your kids to listen to some of this stuff. But even though there's profanity, it's like poetry. Like, listen to this clip of Dan Doherty and Jerry Jewell talking about whether or not to have cinnamon on the dining table.
Some of the cases I will get sent to hire guns. Quick time, bouncing in the fucking saddle and howling at every goddamn hoof fall.
I put out cinnamon.
Where?
The meeting table.
On whose instruction?
Cinnamon's good with peaches.
Do not put unauthorized cinnamon on the goddamn meeting table. That's all the fuck we need.
It's available as a choice.
Which is not your province to offer, Jewel.
Well, if food's not my province, then you can make your own fucking breakfast.
I had best not come out of this goddamn kitchen and find goddamn cinnamon on the fucking meeting table.
Hey everybody, selfish plug for me. If you want to see me do stand-up comedy, you can catch me at the Joker's Wild Comedy Club in New Haven, Connecticut, April 12th and 13th. And also at the Turning Stone Casino on April 17th in Verona, New York. For all other shows and information, and also if you want to buy my new CD, Paul Morrissey's Back, produced by Rooftop Comedy, you can get that at rooftopcomedy.com or just get it on the website and at paulhasawebsite.com. So, thank you. Those kind of places. Like, I'm from upstate New York, which is like really rural. Like, everybody I knew, first day of hunting I was the only one in school. Like, that's like a national holiday,
It was an excuse absence during tobacco cutting season. You could be off to work, or the first day of deer season.
Okay, so where did you grow up in Kentucky,
Kentucky,
right?
Kentucky, just north of Nashville, about 100 miles.
Okay.
Well, also, Clooney grew up in Kentucky. Johnny Depp grew up in Owensboro, Kentucky. And Cruz grew up in Louisville. They're all about my age, but they drank from a different water supply.
Yeah.
They got the high cheekbone water supply,
Well, you were talking about how you love Belushi, my favorite Belushi. Because I think I'm excited to talk to you because I know you're a big music guy and you're, film and you've got to work with a lot of great people. And I'm a huge fan of the history of a lot of this stuff. And I like, I know all the famous guys that have the cool stories, especially in music. I love Joe Walsh. Like, he's one of my favorites. And he's got this great, because he used to party with Belushi. Have you ever heard this Chicago story about they're trying to get into a nightclub or one of those high-end places, and Belushi's really, he's like, I got Joe Walsh with me. He really wanted to be perfect, and they wouldn't let him in because they're wearing jeans. So and they're drinking the whole time too. So Belushi just wouldn't take no for an answer. So Joe Walsh says, like, the next thing I know, I'm in the alley, and John Belushi's spray painting my jeans black. So they got in. They ended up sitting in these expensive chairs, and then when they got up there, it was all black. So they ended up having to pay like $2,000 or something. He's like, "But we got in. That was the important thing to him."
See, I got to work with Robin Williams a few years ago. Like in, 04 or something. We were in Alaska. And I remember having Reality, What a Concept, his first album, and I memerized side one. That's what I used to do. I used to steal jokes. I'd sit there and watch.
So did he,
I would watch.
apparently.
Oh, I've heard. If you heard in the back of the room, if you heard that laugh,
Yeah.
you knew you were going to be covered. Nicest guy.
I mean, that's, yeah.
Well, I used to, in high school, because SCTV was on late. It was like syndicated, but if you stayed up past midnight on Fridays, so I'd stay up. I would steal jokes. I would watch Make Me Laugh. Remember that game show with the comics, Gary Mule Deer and all those guys. And then I'd go to school and use the jokes like they were my own. But with Robin, I memorized side one of his record. There's my Mort doll. See it right up there? Standing above you. I collect action figures. We're in my office out at my house.
Yeah, we're in Earl's playhouse.
Action figures of people that I've worked with or know. But that's my Mort doll.
Oh, awesome.
I think you pull his string, he's probably got some jokes. but anyway, working with him, we were doing this movie in Alaska called The Big White. And I'm sure you've had it too, where you get these pinch me moments of where, you dream of doing this and then it becomes a job and it becomes, and every now and then you're on something, you think, holy shit, I can't believe I'm actually getting to do this.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we're standing up in Alaska and it's freezing and we're in these big parkas. Holly Hunter's character in our movie had Tourette's syndrome. And we're talking about Tourette's. It's me, him, and Tim Blake Nelson.
Okay.
And Robin's saying, sometimes it's tactile. They can't look at something. You have to touch it. And I went, that's Tourette's. He goes, well, no, it's not really Tourette's. It's like with a mental retardation. I did that in that movie House of D. I just did recently with Duchovny. It was that sort of thing. I said, I know. I did the same thing in Mary. Robin goes, what? I said, yeah, it was the same thing in Mary. If I didn't trust somebody, I'd have to touch them, and I wouldn't let them touch my ears unless I trusted them. That's you? I said, yeah. He goes, that's you. That's you. Oh, my God. I called people. I said, where did they find this retarded guy? That's you. So then Warren becomes one of his characters because, he's always working.
Yeah, yeah.
He's working.
He's soaking everything in.
Yeah.
That's why I don't think even when that stuff happens, it's not conscious.
No, I don't think so.
It's like absorbing everything.
Yeah. Whatever's funny and whatever works, and it gets filtered through that nutty mind.
Yeah.
But then for like a week or two, Warren became one of his characters that he would break into. And cut. Franklin Beans! So one day he's doing it, and I got this big shit-eating grin on my face. And he goes, what? I said, well, I remember as a freshman in high school, literally side one of your record, memorizing the whole thing. So I've done you countless times. Now watching you do me, that's a kick in the pants.
Well, yeah, let's preface this. We have Earl Brown. Do you use the W, or is that just professional?
There was an Earl Brown.
IMDb.
There was a William Brown.
Yeah.
I went to school with John Riley, John C. So same thing. So that's my running gag. Put an initial in your name, and you might have an acting career.
Yeah, well, I would almost go with the first initial, but a couple guys have done it. Because I was going to go, because I'm Paul Morrissey. So basically you have the singer to compete with.
Yeah.
He's Steven, actually. But then the director, Andy Warhol's movie's Paul Morrissey. And then I think there's...
Well, you could do Morrissey style. You could just stand on stage, look at your shoes, and kind of mumble your jokes.
Well, I was just going to go by Paul. If he can go by Morrissey, I can just be Paul. But then my IMDb for the union is Paul C. Morrissey, which I don't know if I like the C. Like it's...
Worked for Riley.
Yeah. But it's C at the end of the name, too. Like yours, I mean, especially with all the Western stuff, it's just natural. You know what I mean?
Well, Earl.
Yeah.
Earl around the world is, it's the name of the upper crust. It's royalty. In America, it's a name at the truck stop.
Right. So let me preface this, because this is a weird thing. So I was a huge... this is also a lesson to comedians. talk about your life and what you like. Because I mean, you've seen a lot of stand up, and you're a big comedy fan. And nothing used to shatter me more than I remember I was working somewhere in like Ohio, and this guy had like a 10-minute bit about how he leased a Corvette, and it was $500 a month. His rent was only $450, and the electricity, and he plugged in his refrigerator. It was a whole big actually well-written bit. And then so afterwards I talked to him. I was like, that is crazy about your car, man. He's like, what do you mean? I don't have that car. And I was like, what do you mean? You just made it up? And that's like the first sign of like joke thief to me, is like, you just pulled this out of nowhere. You were never so my whole thing was always to do stuff that really happened to me about my life, and then obviously make the funny parts rise. So I remember I was at the Flappers Comedy Club doing I did some joke about how I can't grow a mustache, and I always admire people that can grow a mustache, it makes you look mean, you get that Sam Elliott Deadwood mustache, because I'm a big fan of both of those guys. And I was like, it makes you look like you just did a shot of whiskey and punched me in the face. And you were at the show, and you came up to me afterwards because I made the Deadwood reference.
Well, you made the Deadwood joke, and everybody at the table was like nudging you.
Yeah.
And then I had to go say something to him. Go say something to him.
And then, of course, I like Robin Williams, have no idea that you were in something about Mary. So that blows my mind as well. And so we ended up becoming at least Facebook friends, and then I end up knowing like a bunch of people that because the next week, this is the weirdest thing. So Franklyn Ajaye, of course, is a comedy,
who used to be on Make Me Laugh,
right?
His jokes I stole.
It's the hilarious comedy game, Make Me Laugh. All right, 120, Tom. You got one more to go. Franklyn Ajaye. Say hello to Tom Gruff. Yeah, it's your shot. Come on.
Pretty good mood tonight. How about you? In a good mood?
Good mood.
Did you ever watch The Rifleman?
Yeah.
You like Rifleman?
Yeah.
Starring Chuck Connors. He played Lucas McCain, a man who works his little son Mark like a dog,
Who I just found his first record album. I just bought it at a used record store not too long ago.
Okay. And he wrote this book. He interviewed a bunch of comedians when Franklyn was like, he was literally like a professor in Australia somewhere and taught comedy or something, and interviewed a bunch of comedians. And that's one of the first books that you read, like when you get into comedy, watch that Seinfeld comedian movie, and there's like 3 or 4 books that everyone reads, just to kind of get caught up on the history and stuff. So when I met him at the Improv. Well, this is the thing. I'm just getting into Deadwood, and I'm like, hey, and I love you on the show too. I'm just really getting into the show, and he's like, oh, it just got canceled. It was like literally like that day. He's I just found out.
We were all sucker punched.
Yeah,
we were all sucker punched.
Yeah,
that was a big showbiz lesson to me. I had a movie. I'd done this book adaptation of Provinces of Night. So I worked on the writing staff of Deadwood seasons 2 and 3.
I'll ask you about that a little bit later. But yeah,
with that, I was able to get this money together for this indie movie. It was a $5 million budget. So man, I'm riding high. Like I'm a supporting lead on Deadwood, and I'm on the staff, and it's so well respected and doing so well. I got my first movie in pre-production with some stars attached to it.
Yeah,
riding high on the hog, baby. So the director had asked me to come and do the off-camera reading for these auditions for Provinces. So I did, and I walk out of the office there, and I had an appointment for a tattoo, right? So I open my phone, turn it on, message. Yeah, Earl, it's David Milch. He says, would you call me at the house? I need to talk to you. And I thought, call him. He hates when he's at work at home. He doesn't want to be bothered,
right?
Because Doherty, the real Doherty, was murdered in Deadwood.
Right.
And my first thought was, God damn it, I bet Doherty's going to get murdered next season.
Uh-huh.
Like, well, at least I can hopefully keep the writing job. So I call him up. I'm driving, right? Yeah, Earl, David. I hate making these fucking calls, but the show's canceled.
Oh, man.
And what? I said, hang on a second. I pull over to the side of the street, put my truck in park. I said, what'd you say? the show's canceled. You know, and he goes into this explanation of what happened. I'm just shell-shocked. I'm like, can't fucking believe it. Because we had 7-year deals. We were doing
I didn't
well.
realize that.
Well,
Okay.
Well, I mean, we're signed on for 7, and they had renegotiated after the second. So I was making decent money. And I thought by season 6 and 7, I'm going to be making real money.
Yeah.
And thought for sure. I mean, we're a hit. We're a critic's darling. So I'm still just in a whirl. So I go to my tattoo appointment. It's over here in the valley. Normally, if you
weren't getting a Deadwood tattoo, were you?
No, but
Season
it
4.
became very dark. You normally take your mind away because tattoos fucking hurt.
Yeah.
But my mind is just thinking sting, bleed, hurt, so I don't think about Deadwood.
Morning.
Morning. Best time of day to go fuck yourself.
Fuck yourself.
Go fuck yourself.
Fuck yourself.
Go fuck yourself.
Go fuck yourself.
So the next morning, I call our UPM because the movie's in pre-production. We had gap financing, and it's in pre-production in Wilmington. And I needed to get those guitars. There's one sitting there right behind you because we got the movie made 3 years later. But I had to deal with Gibson. If we had the right person playing it, they were going to give us the guitars. But at that point, we needed to put a down payment, and those are expensive guitars. So called a UPM. I said, I need a check cut to Gibson in Nashville. Moratorium on checks. I said, what? Right now, I can't cut any checks. Why can't you cut any checks? We'd lost the money. So within a 12-hour span of time, I go from, dude, the world is my oyster, to shit. To my movie was dead, my TV show was dead, but I had a bitchin' tattoo, man.
What was it? What'd you get?
I'll take my shirt off and show you later. It was just, I had this gothic cross, but I wanted it to look, and I'd already put wings on it. I went in 3 different stages. I drew all this shit myself. But I had like all this darkness and death and stuff behind it. So I have a bunch of shadows and skulls and shit that wrap all around the upper part of my arm.
So that wasn't based on the checks for the next year. It wasn't expensive.
No, I
you didn't
pay
get
for
Kat
that.
Von D to do it or something.
No, I learned my list. Well, it's all showbiz stories. I learned my lesson of spending money you don't have. Right after Mary, I did a pilot for DreamWorks TV because they had just set up, and it was first thing Charlie Sheen ever did for television. He had just gotten his stuff together for the first time.
Yeah.
But it was him and Joey Pantoliano, which The Matrix had just opened, and Dwayne Martin and Terry Polo and me. And it was hilarious. It was a sitcom. But we shot it with 5 cameras, like where the cameras follow you down the set, not just the standard 3-camera audience point of view, but shot like Sports Night. Anyway, ABC had bought it in a bidding war. Big deal. And when we taped, like Spielberg was there that night, all of the hot shots. And Katzenberg, it was his baby, and he'd been there in the week. He gave us 1 note. He's notorious about tinkering with stuff. He gave us 1 note in the entire week. He thought in the date scene, Terry's character needed to be wearing a sexier blouse. But that was it. So we do it, big laughs, and I thought, this is, Gary David Goldberg had created it, who did Spin City, and he did Mary Tyler Moore years ago. ABC was still in New York, and he called me from the plane as he's flying back. He goes, look, I just want to tell you, we have tested through the roof. We're going to be the next show for next season. They're putting all their muscle behind us. They haven't decided a time slot yet, but it looks great. That's Wednesday. Thursday, I go and buy a Ford GT convertible.
Oh, boy.
Friday was the lawsuit where Katzenberg was suing Disney Animation, and they caught the CEO of Disney, Eisner. He was on the witness stand, and he got caught in a lie, and he lost his cool and blew up. As soon as he left the courtroom, he called ABC, which they owned at that point, and went, kill that show. So I go from Wednesday, bought my hot rod, Friday, no show, no contract. Man. So that was a lesson learned.
Yeah, I mean, I learned that at my divorce. I almost said my first divorce, which would have been...
Well, it was your first.
Yeah. I'd rather lose.
Now you're just prepping for your second.
Yeah. I'd rather. Yeah, I lost. Well, you lose the house either way. The show doesn't go or the marriage doesn't work. You lose the house. So that's what you're betting on. But I've been pretty good about money. I mean, it's never been about the money. But like you said, like I don't know if it's like a Catholic thing in you that you're like, all right, something bad's gonna happen. Like, so I'm always a little bit reserved. The worst. I signed with a manager, and I've always had agents, but I've never had a manager because I think I care about my career more than anybody else. So I haven't found the fanatical manager yet. But and I signed with this manager, and it was. I think the whole thing was Benny Medina, which was he's like a music guy.
I know the name, yeah.
And so they had Chris Rock, I can't remember, Bernie Mac with the Bernie Mac show. They had Mariah Carey, Tyra Banks, and forget there was one other huge one. And it was
so they have all these clients when they bring you on board.
Yeah, that's
man.
So then Chris Rock leaves. Bernie Mac dies. Mariah Carey, Tyra Banks moves her show to New York and sues the management company. And then Mariah Carey gets married and lets her husband be the manager. Like within, and they're like, oh yeah, we're closing down. And the guy that signed me, he's like, I'll work with you, but we're done. Benny
so they close the offices.
Yeah, literally.
You sign, and then they close the offices.
So I'm like, maybe this is a bad sign.
Well, there was a lot of room at the conference table, those few days that you were there.
Yeah, I was like, when you paid the rent until I'll at least put up shop here or something.
So did you go with another manager at a later point?
No, you know what? A lot of the stuff, comedy-wise, just kind of worked out on my own. Because, I mean, when you do showcases and stuff like that, that's kind of how, it's basically like the audition process, and you work these clubs and somebody might see you, but then,
but it's with Reap, they know where the bread's buttered, where you're making some money. Mm-hmm. So you're in live appearances and stuff. And I auditioned for this film, and there was a character that was the Hemi guy. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was the role he played in that commercial.
Right.
And I called him. I said, "Have you seen this script that's out?" And I wasn't auditioning for that. I was auditioning for something else. Uh-huh. And I said, "Dude, this role is your character from that commercial."
Yeah.
So he calls up, and he's with a big agency. And nobody was keeping an eye out. He did it. He got the role, and he did the film.
Good.
But it was that of the stand up, the comics, the guy that books him keeps him busy.
Yeah.
But in movies, they weren't paying attention. So that's what you need somebody that knows.
Right.
What other movies?
That's what I definitely need. That guy that kind of keeps my name in the mix. Like I went on an audition today. I think I told you it was for the Bill Murray type. It's a commercial thing. I actually went out for that commercial, the Super Bowl one with Seth Rogen and Paul Rudd, and they're like an Ari Gold type agent, and they just wanted a guy that could improv and kind of make fun of him and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then I watched the commercial, and Bob Odenkirk gets it, who's like the original Ari Gold.
Yeah.
For those people who don't know, like Jeremy Piven played it in Entourage. But Jeremy Piven was actually in the Larry Sanders Show as when
Odenkirk was doing,
a secretary or he played a writer's assistant or something on the show, and Odenkirk played the first Ari Gold.
Yeah,
and it's in one of the Larry Sanders DVDs when he does all those interviews. And Bob's just like, just remember, Jeremy, I played Ari first because I think he won like an Emmy or something for
remember.
Entourage doing that. But yeah, it was kind of funny that
Jeremy did.
Yeah,
Jeremy definitely did.
Right.
I was thinking Odenkirk.
No, Odenkirk. I think
Sanders. I've got the Larry Sanders, that best of disc, where it's like double or triple disc. I don't have the whole series.
Yeah, well, I've worked with Shandling a few times, and the DVD of he does all these interviews because I don't know if they were locked up with legally or something, but it was just like a few years ago that he did all the he interviews Apatow and he interviews Alec Baldwin while they're boxing and Seinfeld and Tom Petty's like his neighbor. He interviews him.
With Apatow. And this will show you, you always got to be at looking out for the next job, job. At Christmas, flying home to visit with family. My wife's from the same hometown, so all our families in the same. We're the only ones to ever leave. So we're going home while I'm reading the comedy issue of Vanity Fair, which Judd edited. Well, he's got this section on heroes, and David Milch and he writes about Milch and how hilarious Deadwood was underneath all of its darkness, and loved Deadwood, and David's an absolute genius. And so, I'm kind of on Milch's team. Once Milch uses you, he uses you over and over. So I love Judd. I've never met him, never auditioned for him. So when I got back from Christmas, I wrote Judd a fan letter. And I said, to Judd's intern and Judd's assistant, I wholly realize I'm not the only desperate aspirant to write a fan letter to Judd hoping for work.
Yeah.
But let it be known that I'm a desperate aspirant with credits. Dear Judd, so please pass this along. Judd will be highly impressed.
Yeah.
And I basically just put a picture of myself. I said, I know you love Milch because I read what you wrote. I got all your movies, and it should come as no surprise because the people you picked for I Found This Funny, his book of short stories. I said, this is me. I realized Deadwood is not exactly a comedy, but to further bolster my comic bona fides, this is me. And this picture from Mary. I want to work with you.
Yeah.
So I'm just taking a stab in the dark with somebody I've never met at all. Because I want to work with him.
Right. Well, I mean, and he was buddies with Stiller. I mean, I'm sure they still are, but they wrote on
they did Stiller show together.
The show together,
Yeah.
And then...
well, see, that was Andy Dick, and gosh, who else? I remember the Stiller show because they did... I have it on VHS here. I was obsessed with Elvis. My mom was, and I was in Memphis on the day Elvis died.
Oh, no way.
And they did a short... My sister lost her hearing the day Elvis died, or the day before. She has Meniere's disease. We had rushed her to the eye and ear clinic there where her doctor was, and it was right across the street from Baptist Hospital. So when Elvis dies and they bring the body in and the streets are just full of all these people mourning, I was a kid. I was, 11 or 12? So it just sunk in with me. But they did a short called, what's it called, Elvis Stories, I think? But about these, the Elvis Stories was a documentary. They did a goof on that. God, what is it? It's here somewhere. I can't forget what the name of it was. But that was the first time I saw Andy was in it, and I think Ben was in it. But that predated them doing the Ben Stiller show.
Well, I mean, Elvis was always, Andy Kaufman was literally obsessed with Elvis, not even in a joking way. That whole thing was like an homage.
I remember seeing Kaufman the first time. And,
you saw him?
Oh, I never saw him live. Just seeing him on TV as a kid. And I always thought, I read an interview, I think it was Rolling Stone. Again, this is in my formative years, but it had an impact on me. Comics are there to make you laugh. That's what comics do. You're supposed to go to comedy, you're supposed to hear comedy, put a comedy record on, you get a giggle. And then, and I was describing Carlin, as we were talking about earlier before we turned the machine on, who made me think. Oh shit, I hadn't thought things like that. Oh. Hearing 7 dirty words the first time, and, bad thoughts, bad intentions, but words. Again, just kind of opened my mind. But seeing Kaufman, just when he puts the Mighty Mouse record on and does the whole thing, and it's just absurd. You can't stop watching him, though. But then after he hit, I read this interview with him, and he said, my goal is to get a response. I don't care if the audience hates me. I don't care if they get up and throw things. I'm going to affect them. They might not laugh. And that kind of hit me of he completely gets, he knows he's purposefully doing this.
Yeah.
And then I read, the biography that Bob, what's his name, wrote about him, his buddy.
Oh, Zamuda, yeah.
Yeah, Zamuda. And so, I found him fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, well, and I got a chance to hang out with Bob.
Is he still doing Tony Clifton? I knew a few years ago Tony Clifton
it's
showed
not really
back up.
him if you talk to him.
What?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's still a guy.
It's Andy coming back from South America where he's living on some beach somewhere.
But, the thing was, so I ended up talking, or I read something about it, because this is the crazy one. I don't know if you remember this. He does Carnegie Hall, which is kind of like absurd that because from Taxi he had gotten so famous he could do it. So I tracked down a copy of the Andy Kaufman at Carnegie Hall. So I don't know if you remember, he invites his grandmother to,
See, I never saw that.
Yeah, it's like I promised I'd give her the best seat in the house. So then she's sitting on the stage, they have her sitting the whole entire show. And then they have somebody who was in one of Gene Autry's original movies, one of the cowgirls, and she comes out and dances and has a heart attack on stage. and then they bring somebody to like bring her back to life, and so it's all this craziness. And then the big moment that everyone remembers is that he took the audience out for milk and cookies after the show.
I remember reading about that.
So then I asked Zamuda, he told me the rest of the story. So they, him and Andy, they're partying, both hooked up with a bunch of chicks, and so they get up. And the last thing they said, which they didn't put in the special, was, and tomorrow we're going to take everyone on the Staten Island ferry at like 9 in the morning or something like that. So then Zamuda says, they're all hungover and everything, and you knock on the door. He opens it. He's like, Andy, it's like 8 o'clock. What are you doing? He's like, what if people are waiting at the ferry? And you're like, well, we just said it as like a goof, And they're like, no, but if there's people there, I want to make sure that they get on. So they end up schlubbing down there, and then there was like 300 people
waiting.
And they paid a quarter or whatever it was to get on the ferry, but they didn't put any of that in the TV special, which I thought that was like a cooler story, that they just took these people to Staten Island and back. But
see, I never knew until I read Zamuda's book. I was watching Letterman the night with the King, with Lawler, when he was on there. I thought that was for real.
Yeah.
I completely bought it.
Yeah.
Mostly because of Letterman's response, when he smacked him and he went
I don't think Letterman ever exactly knew what was going to happen.
No. And I didn't think that Lawler was in on it until I read Zamuda's book.
Yeah.
I am sick and tired. Hi there, and welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen. As you can tell, Andy Kaufman is here, sort of, and Jerry Lawler is also here, and there's some nights I wish Tom were here, but that's not the case. Is Andy, are you coming in here again, or?
I am sick of this bullshit. You are full of bullshit, my friend. I will sue you for everything you have. I will sue your ass. You're a motherfucking asshole. As far as I'm concerned, you hear me? A fucking asshole. Fuck you. I will get you for this. I am sorry to use those words on television. I apologize to all my fans. I'm sorry. But you're a fucking asshole. A fucking asshole. You hear me? A fucking asshole.
I think you can use some of those words on TV. I'm not. But what you can't do is throw coffee. I've said it over and over again. Well, that about wraps this segment up. I want to thank my guests, Mr. Lawler. Jerry, thank you very much for being here, and good luck to you, sir. And my thanks to Andy Kaufman.
He told me the rest of the story. So they, him and Andy, they're partying, both hooked up with a bunch of chicks, and so they get up. And the last thing they said, which they didn't put in the special, was, and tomorrow we're going to take everyone on the Staten Island ferry at like 9 in the morning or something like that. So then Zamuda says, they're all hungover and everything, and you knock on the door. He opens it. He's like, Andy, it's like 8 o'clock. What are you doing? He's like, what if people are waiting at the ferry? And you're like, well, we just said it as like a goof, And they're like, no, but if there's people there, I want to make sure that they get on. So they end up schlubbing down there, and then there was like 300 people
waiting.
And they paid a quarter or whatever it was to get on the ferry, but they didn't put any of that in the TV special, which I thought that was like a cooler story, that they just took these people to Staten Island and back. But
see, I never knew until I read Zamuda's book. I was watching Letterman the night with the King, with Lawler, when he was on there. I thought that was for real.
Yeah.
I completely bought it.
Yeah.
Mostly because of Letterman's response, when he smacked him and he went
I don't think Letterman ever exactly knew what was going to happen.
No. And I didn't think that Lawler was in on it until I read Zamuda's book.
Yeah. But the best part, so at the end...
Oh, with the Staten Island? Yeah.
No, at the end of the actual show, he's trying to finish the show, and there really was no ending. So they're like... So they bring the one woman back to life. They bring out, he's like, the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. They bring them all on stage, like 100 and something people. And then he's like, I'd like to thank my grandmother, played by Robin Williams. And it's Robin Williams with the makeup, pulls it off, and like the Mrs. Doubtfire make it. So,
yeah.
oh wait, your daughter was just.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know if they had somebody else sit in the whole way or if he just came in at the end. But yeah, it was literally like he pulled out and it was Robin Williams. Of course, the place goes bananas for that. So it was like they try to like find like the perfect ending to it. So that was pretty cool. But the other Elvis thing is Eddie Murphy, hugely influenced by Elvis. And one of the funniest things, like all his specials, of course, just the stage and the dressing up kind of was all influenced by Elvis. But the funniest thing, if you watch Coming to America, he plays that Randy Watson, the sexual chocolate. And at the end, when nobody's clapping, he sings like, I believe the children are the future or whatever, and nobody's making any noise. And he just drops the mic, and then he does that like turn like that Elvis did at the end of is that like Blue Hawaii or one of the...
Well, he would do it in his specials.
The big special,
He was big into judo. So
and over.
Yeah.
And Eddie Murphy did that as the character. I was like, wow, that's really...
I remember reading Rolling Stone when he was on the cover, when he was still on SNL. And a big section of it was his fascination with Elvis.
Yeah.
And Elvis's charisma.
Right.
And
you wonder how... Yeah.
See, he was one... I've always been fascinated by artists. And I've seen it with musicians. I've seen it with comics. I've seen it with a ton of people who grab the golden ring and then lose what got them there to begin with. Like the money and the ego take over, and then that passion that drove you. I did a Vampire in Brooklyn with him.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was just going to ask you if you had worked with him. Yeah.
Well, I had done a prior movie with Wes Craven. I did New Nightmare, and so Wes hired me to do that. So I was brought in to do the table read at Paramount.
He's an upstate New York guy too, I think. Wes Craven, right?
Wes, yeah. Well, he grew up. He lived up there.
Yeah.
He grew up.
He's from England, right? Or no?
No. He's American. He went to Wheaton College. He went to college to be a Baptist preacher.
Oh, wow.
He was the kid that was not allowed to watch TV or listen to radio. He was the kid handing out Bible tracts at school. And Freddy Krueger, his dad had left them and passed away when Wes was a toddler.
Right.
So there was all that issue.
But it's like one of those little towns way upstate.
Yeah. Oh,
because Milch is from like Buffalo too. Like a lot of those guys are.
Well, they lived in town. Was it in Buffalo? But he had one night he looked out. They lived on like the second floor, and he looked out, and there's a dude standing on the street corner in a fedora and a green and red striped sweater, and he turned and looked up at him, and it terrified him, and he had nightmares that guy was there to get him. And if I remember correctly, Freddy Krueger was the name of a bully in school that used to beat him up.
Okay.
So that's how it all came about. But he took a shine to me when I first moved out here. And so I'm at this table read for Vampire in Brooklyn. Well, Eddie's like an hour late. And his whole entourage goes with him everywhere.
Right.
Like he has his... We're inside Paramount in the Roddenberry building where you can't get in there until you go through checkpoints. But he's got his guards by the door. And it's this removed... And Kadeem Hardison had on a Michael Moore T-shirt. And that was when the fight, the Michael Moore and George Foreman fight was that night.
Yeah, not Michael Moore.
Not Michael Moore, the filmmaker. George Foreman would have taken him out in like 10 seconds. Michael Moore, the fighter. And because Eddie's a big fight fan.
Yeah.
And we hadn't started yet. Or no, maybe we were at break when that happened. But he sees his T-shirt and he goes, "Oh, Michael Moore. Ain't no way. No way." He goes, because he thinks he's a tough guy. Big George, he's going to step in and he's going to take one blow. It's just going to take one from Big George. So he gets up and starts doing the fight.
Right.
He starts being Michael Moore, doing George Foreman, doing like Cosell, calling the fight. Because George had quit boxing, or Cosell, he was gone at that point.
Yeah.
But it's brilliant. It's bust-a-gut hilarious. And he riffed for like 5 minutes on this.
Yeah.
Got the room in stitches. It's time to read. He sits down to read the script. Gone.
Yeah.
Nothing. Just like how do you the guy's a comic genius. But if your heart's not in it, if you're removed, which is what he was.
Yeah.
And he was in so many of those films and still occasionally remains so.
Right. Well, that's what everyone says. When he can turn it on when he wants to.
Yeah.
But it's like you wonder if he's bored or if it's just that detachment of I mean, nobody was. When you think about the most famous person, yeah. I mean, the 80s, when you're in your early 20s and you're a movie star and you're on Saturday Night Live and you're the biggest comedian in the world, like, there's no way of settling.
There's not
easy.
much else you can go for, you know? But let's say that's Elvis. You compare 1956, that dude, or when he came back from the movies in the black leather suit when he was doing the TV special, that singer, compared that to white fat Elvis in Vegas with a white jumpsuit. It just...
Well, I mean, and plus you're adding some self-medicating stuff to that thing. Him and Michael Jackson. That's the only person I would have equated Eddie Murphy to in the 80s was Michael Jackson, and none of those guys handled it. You know, and not that I blame them. I mean, you can see.
How did Carlin maintain it? Because Carlin never lost it.
Well, but he definitely had a lot of substance issues.
No doubt about that. But I'm talking about the passion to still pursue and seek. I mean, to me, it's...
Well, I always think that's my more of my question with music than... I mean, because comedy, if you think about it, if you watch HBO, every famous comedian is over 50. I mean, you got Seinfeld, Ron White, Ellen DeGeneres, Wanda Sykes, Louis Black. I mean, was 60 before he... got famous pretty much.
Yeah, but he was like in his 40s before he ever started doing comedy.
Yeah.
He was a playwright.
But I mean, when you think about like most of the guys, it's been over a certain amount of time. There's no quick, like you're talking about like Pauly Shore earlier. Like that doesn't really happen anymore. Even Dane Cook, people thought that was overnight. I mean, he was almost 40 when all that happened, and all the girls were like, "Oh, he's a college guy." I was like, "No, he's been doing it for like 20 years."
He looked like one, but he wasn't.
Yeah. So it's like, so I think comedy-wise, and plus the difference in music is they want to hear George Carlin's new stuff. You know what I mean? Whereas, if you're the Rolling Stones, they don't want to hear the new album. They want to hear the old stuff. So that's why I think it's a little bit different. But I mean, you always wonder, like the Beatles, or
But he still kept pursuing new material and new thinking. It'd be real easy, but it's to just go out and do 7 Dirty Words every night, which he would do 7 Dirty Words, but he always a new thought, a new way of approaching the material.
Well, for me, as that's the artistic thing of that's why you do it. You know what I mean? I don't necessarily do it for, I got to make these people laugh. It's like, no, if I came up with something that I think might work, that's what really gets me, and it can be anything. I
just read that biography. It was a decent book, but Bill Hicks story. And I knew Hicks. I discovered him a couple of years before he died. But that's just burning with that desire to... Of course, Bill never made it to the top of the mountain. He may have become Fat Elvis himself.
Well, I mean, he had that success in Europe. I mean, those are the guys that make the documentaries about him. It's almost like how the blues influenced all those, all those guys in Europe. Like, I guess if you're stepped away from it, I mean, but Bill's thing was he never was, if you talk to clubs, they're like, oh yeah, he used to eat it, and he would turn on the crowd, and so they're like, at the time, it's never, and even Andy Kaufman, you talk to guys and they're like, going after Andy Kaufman at a club when he made everyone want to leave was a nightmare. Yeah. It might be funny to tell the stories now, but at the time, it made your job miserable.
If you had to follow that, or you've gotten the audience so pissed off, or half of them's left, and you got to come out afterwards?
Right. Yeah.
But I'm sure to him that was a mark of success.
Well, yeah, that's him, isn't it?
I think a lot of it is, I mean, hell, most of us that are driven toward this are insecure, needy. You find some creative outlet that teaches you something about yourself. And it can be that. And then I think a lot of folks that, like the Kurt Cobain, he wanted to be a rock star, as anti-rock star as he was. Yeah. But then he becomes it. You get everything.
Right.
And you think all of that stuff is going to fill the hole, and it doesn't.
Right.
And that makes you just more miserable. I mean, Farrelly.
Yeah.
I knew him in passing. It's not like I knew him and we were big buddies, but I was around him. Then suddenly you have all these sycophants and everybody wants you, and you can't figure out who's genuine. So I can see where that fuck people up even more.
Yeah.
But to lose that passion you have to create and to explore creatively thoughts and ideas and feelings, when you lose that, that's when you're really lost.
Well, the funniest thing is with the women, because a lot of these guys, they get kind of crazy when the women seem to be around, But the funniest thing is, so these are all the guys that couldn't get chicks.
Oh, yeah,
then,
of course.
Then they get famous,
Yeah.
and they're like, well, I can get all these girls now. It's like, well, no, those are exactly the phony girls that you didn't want to be
ignored you
around.
in high school. You were the fat, weird kid eating boogers over in the corner that they made fun of.
Yeah, it's like
And now suddenly you're famous. Well, that Bobcat Goldthwait used to have that whole bit on it.
Oh, yeah?
I mean, I wouldn't do it justice to try to quote it, but he had a whole bit back in the 80s about how he was the nerd everybody hated, but suddenly...
Yeah. Yeah, he's from about an hour north of me. He's upstate New York guy. Him and Tom Kenny, who's the voice of SpongeBob SquarePants, they were a comedy team, Tomcat and Bobcat. And then they moved to Boston together, and then they moved out here.
I started to say I didn't know that, but I have heard that somewhere.
Yeah,
down
they
the
both
line.
came out of because that's my whole obsession was, and I've said this before, that telling people you want to be a comedian is like saying you want to be a wizard.
Yeah.
In upstate New York, they're like, oh, well, you can just do that at nighttime, but don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But what are you gonna do for a living?
I played basketball in college. I was an all-state
Really?
point guard in New York. Played in college. I was going to play professional. The only two places I could have played were in Ireland or for the Washington Generals, which is the team that gets beat by the Globetrotters every game, which I should have done for my comedy career. But I didn't.
What school did you play at?
I played at Binghamton University,
Yeah.
and then I coached at Cortland State College, which is right outside of Syracuse.
You still play?
Yeah, I just started again.
Shane Taylor, the director of Bloodworth, he and I partner up. We're doing other movies together.
Oh, yeah?
He played at Murray State. He
Oh,
was
okay.
a walk-on. He was basically practice squad.
But still, that's Division I. That's,
he's Division I, and he's an excellent guard.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what happened was I ended up coaching, and then I got into TV sports. So I was a TV sports anchor in Sacramento for ABC, and that was kind of my detached. That's the way that you can kind of let go of it a little bit, that you're not, you're still attached to the
around the
sports,
locker room.
but you don't have to be in shape for it.
Yeah. Well, I had one talking about aging in shape. I started playing over here at L.A., the sport,
Sports club or
sports club.
Yeah.
No, L.A. Fitness. I'm a member over here at the one by Universal, or member, but I go to the one at Universal. I was a shitty basketball player. I played football. We started football when I was in high school, and I started, but I hadn't played, as a kid, so I wasn't very good. I was just strong. And I played baseball, but I never played organized basketball. Because anyway, I loved it. I was playing on the basketball on the playground. So I start playing again over here. And I can rebound because I'm big and strong and I can move people out of the way. Can't shoot for shit, and I'm slow. But we're playing. It's a pickup game, 5-on-5, full court. And I run a moving pick, and I laid this guy out. I mean, laid his ass out. Because I'm playing, I'm at that point was like 46. I'm 49 now. But I'm playing with these 20-year-olds, right? I laid this kid out. And it was a foul.
Right.
He come up off the floor ready to fight, like pops up off the floor, fist drawn, and there's this look of pity in his face, like I could read fuck, I can't hit Grandpa.
Yeah,
And I said the look of pity would have been far worse than if he had just knocked me right in the jaw, because it was that moment of oh God.
Hey, I got two things I want to ask you about. Though. First one is Deadwood. That was the other tie-in. The week after, I don't know when it was, I get called in for jury duty. Steven Tobolowski's in jury duty with me. We end up chatting, and I think he's going to do an episode of the podcast in the next week or so. So do you have any stories about him on Deadwood, or did you guys end up...
I'm sure he will probably share it, but he and Powers Booth went to college together, if I remember correctly.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He's known Powers since college, and he's known Paris, Powers' daughter, since the moment she was born.
Oh, wow.
Like he was at the hospital when she was born. She played one of the prostitutes at the Bella Union, the one he had sex with.
Oh, no.
So I think that was a rather uncomfortable... she had to give him a handy or something like that. I can't remember the specifics, but I know there was sexual dalliance involved.
Did Milch write that on purpose? Did you?
I don't know. I don't know.
And and that was one of the other ones I wanted to ask you about. So Milch, the story I heard, he takes back pills, and writes it while he's laying on the floor.
He has back problems all the time. He won't touch a computer.
Mm-hmm.
There is actually, if you have the season 2 box set, and I think it's on the complete box too, they did a featurette called Trusting the Process, which is a half-hour short that follows him for the creation of one whole episode. And you'll see him at work. Mm-hmm. He lays on the floor and he dictates. Mm-hmm. And he would be dictating today what we're going to shoot tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you a really quick, funny Deadwood story that ties in with music and all this and ends to how he works. I was doing a play, Steve Earle's play. You know Steve Earle, the songwriter in Nashville? In New York now, but Steve's a close friend. I was a rabid fan, and I met him in an airport.
Oh, okay.
And then he he ended up writing a role for me in this first play he was doing. Oh, wow. So I go to Nashville, I'm doing it, and I get offered Deadwood. Well, it conflicted. And Steve, he heard the phone call, said, all right, if you can't work on October 31st, Halloween, it's a drop dead. They cannot reschedule around you. You have to be in L.A. to shoot that day. Mm-hmm. I hang up. I said, look, I've committed to this play a year ago. This play is first. Steve goes, yeah, but I'm going to feel like shit if I cost you a TV show. So we ended up canceling a performance. It all worked out. A year later, Deadwood, HBO wanted a theme song. And Davis Guggenheim, who was the producing director at the time, wanted Steve Earle to write it because he was a fan. Well, Milch comes down to my trailer. He said, I heard you're friends with this Steve Earle guy. And I never heard his music, so I'm playing him Steve's songs. Steve's very literate, he's like Dylan. Well, Milch couldn't turn loose any words he didn't control, so we just end up with music. But a year later, Steve's watched the show. He's fanatic about it. Mm-hmm. So he's going to be out here, so we're having breakfast together. It's me, him, and Milch. And I knew they're both so much alike. They're both genius minds, and they were both junkies for a dozen-plus years that they were full-time on needles.
Oh, wow.
I knew they're so much alike they're going to repel one another or instantly connect.
Yeah.
And within 5 minutes, they're sharing junkie stories.
Oh, wow.
And so we have this hour and a half breakfast, and Milch says, I know you did some of The Wire, right? He goes, yeah, I did a few episodes. He goes, you want to do our show? I want to write something for you. So next season rolls around. David comes to me. And he says, all right, you need to call your buddy Steve. Got this thing. He's going to be Hooplehead Steve. He's going to be this guy gets his Jerry Tobolowski.
Right.
That Jerry screws him out of his claim. But he wants to get back at him, but he can't because he's a rich, connected white guy. He's going to come out, and the general's going to be on the sidewalk, Franklyn Ajaye. Mm-hmm. And he says he's going to chase the general down the street, and then he's going to tar and feather him. It's going to be funny, but it's going to be creepy, and it's going to be a great part. So get Steve's dates. Mm-hmm. So call him up, and he had a week of availability between the Hardly Strictly Bluegrass Festival in San Fran and the start of his tour, because he has to tour. It's how he makes it. He does really well, but he's got to do it on the road. Mm-hmm. So I give him the dates, and didn't work out. David wasn't ready, so we have to push it to the next episode. So he brings Michael Harney in, who he's worked with before, to play Hooplehead. So one day, for some reason, whatever, I didn't go into work. And I'm sitting here in the office, and they'd email me the sides of what we're going to do the next day, what David had written. So I read what's going on in the trailer. And again, did I have a cold? Or there was some reason, because I was there every day, either in the writer's trailer or on the set. But and again, I was here. So I read what we're doing tomorrow. So I call up Steve. I said, hey, man, what's going on? Oh, we got the night off. We ain't got a gig, so I didn't get a hotel. We're just sitting on a bus and watching movies, man. What's going on? And I said, well, you might be glad your schedule didn't work out. He goes, why the fuck would I be glad? I want to be on that show. Why would I be glad my schedule didn't work out? I said, because at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, you'd be going to work to fuck a horse? What? I said, Bullock has humiliated Hooplehead. And Hooplehead is a coward, and he can't face Bullock. So he goes to the stable for fuck his horse out of revenge. Uh-huh. Are you shitting me? I said, well, actually, he can't bring himself to stick it in, so he just beats off on the horse's haunch. There's 5 seconds of silence, and Steve goes, what kind of impression did I leave on Milch at that breakfast? So...
Yeah, and I just watched that episode not too long ago, too. I just remember.
Well, Hooplehead ends up being on the whole rest. Michael was on all the other episodes.
Well, that's awesome. And you were a writer on, you wrote...
Seasons 2. We all wrote on every episode. Yeah. David rewrote, David.
So the weird Asian thing wasn't just your idea. That was everybody's idea.
Of which?
Isn't that the episode that you wrote?
Well, the one where Alma is shot at and she's in the gym, which was all. David came to me. He says, we were over budget. He goes, keep as many scenes inside the gym on a sound. It's cheaper to shoot on a soundstage than outside. Okay. So the whole thing at the end, the whole Joni, where she's giving Calamity Jane a bath, and that I had nothing to do with that. Regina Corrado wrote it. But we all would pitch him ideas, and then you would go. There's elements, there's things that I thought of or wrote that are in other episodes. And then there's a bunch of shit that there might be 7 or 8 lines that are in mine that are really as I wrote them. The thing's in meter. It's in iambic pentameter.
Yeah, that was the other thing. Isn't it? Like
pretty
sun
much
up and
every
sundown?
episode would be a day and they were consecutive. We hardly ever jump time.
I wanted to mention the movie that you wrote and produced, Bloodworth. That's available right on.
Well, this spring's an Earlepalooza. Luckily for me, knock on wood. Bates Motel comes on March the 18th. I got a huge role in the pilot. I don't survive the pilot, but it's a great part. And then I have a series that I'm a supporting lead in called Rogue for DirecTV. That I do 6 of the 10 episodes of that. It starts the second week of April. Last week of April, a series called Rectify on the Sundance Channel starts. I don't show up until episode 6, which is the first season's only 6. I'm supposed to show up the second season for that whole arc. And then I did a video game for Sony called The Last of Us, where I did all the motion capture. And boy, you want to know what sexy is? Me in a motion capture suit.
And a unitard with some styrofoam balls.
I look like 10 pound of sausage in a 5-pound casing.
And I saw you in The Master, too.
Yeah.
That scene... with
Joaquin.
Yeah.
That's a story. That'll be the second podcast.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to talk to you again. I know you're a busy
man. Lone Ranger in July.
Okay.
I'm dead on page 12, but I'm in the Lone Ranger. And right over there is my Lone Ranger Fanner 50 cap pistol for when I was 5.
Oh, man.
It's right next to my Doherty gun belt. Yep, right there.
Well, cool. Well, thanks so much for being on the show, Earl. I appreciate it, and good luck with everything. And thanks so much. All right, cool. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Alley Oop Podcast. The good news is that there's more with W Earl Brown. Yes, he actually had to run a quick errand for his family and invited me to stay at his place and try to play one of his amazing guitars, which I only know one song. I know Blackbird by the Beatles, which is I learned when I took a fundamentals of guitar, or no, what was it? Fundamentals of classical guitar at Hartwick College my freshman year, which was an all-athletes class, and it was at 7 in the morning on Thursday morning, and Wednesday was the big dollar mason jar of beer night, so everyone got drunk, and then would still be drunk playing guitar at 7 in the morning on Thursday, and our teacher was a big, apparently a big stoner, because all we did is learn Pink Floyd and Beatles songs. So I played that, and then Earl came back, and we discussed a lot more movies, and a lot more movies. We discussed more movies, and more Deadwood, and more other things, which I'm not speaking very well. It's early. If you don't know, in Los Angeles, it's early. Just, you don't need to know what time it is. It's early. So thank you guys so much for listening to the Alley Oop. Subscribe, tell your friends. If you have any comments, email us at alleyooppodcast@gmail.com. So alleyooppodcast.com, or at gmail.com. alleyooppodcast@gmail.com. And yeah, make sure you check out all the videos. All the videos we talked about during this episode are on alleyooppodcast.com. You can check those out there. All the Andy Kaufman, Franklyn Ajaye, who else? The Coming to America stuff, and all the Deadwood clips that we talked about on the website, alleyooppodcast.com. All right, well, thanks again so much, and listening to part 2 very soon with W Earl Brown. It might even be up already, depending on how lazy you are listening to the episodes. All right, see you.